Good afternoon, everybody. Get this party started.
Unmuted.
So, Ms. Braga, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Thank
All right,
you.
thank you. Mr. Salt, are you there? Mr. Farina, is Mr. Salt there? Can you hear us, Randy? If you are on there and you're trying to talk, you're on mute. Anyone else on the phone? No, okay. So we'll go ahead and do introductions. Now, welcome. Today is the Assembly Budget Finance Committee of the whole. It's August 15th. It is scheduled from 12:10 to 1:10. It's 12:14 now. We'll start with introductions. Mr. Martinez?
George Martinez. Mark Littlefield.
Daniel Boland.
Christopher Constant.
Zach Johnson.
On the phone, we have Karen Braga.
I'm here.
Thank you. Mr. Salt, are you there? We think he's there listening, but we can't hear from him. So also with the administration, we have the finance team, chief administrative officer, and the budget team. So I am chairing today's pop-up chair because the chair is actually of this committee is out sick, and the vice chair or the other co-chair is in Kodiak at the ML conference having fun. So I'll just run us through the agenda. I did not prep for this meeting, so I'll do my best. The first item on the agenda is an update from FEMA reimbursements for CFO. Alden, you have the floor.
Yes, I think we've been giving updates on earthquake over the last few months that we've been doing this. COVID's been kind of static at this point in time. We have Carrie here from the EOC who can give more detail, but we are in the process, as we've discussed the last 2 months, of bringing forward an assembly memo to ask for more spending authority for the earthquake portion. So we're going through an analysis. I would expect to see a request to the assembly here soon to be able to do that. All that money is obligated and will get reimbursed at some point in time, but we need to increase. It's been several years. I think it's at least 3 or 4 years since we've gone and the assembly's increased the authorization of the upper limit for spending for earthquakes. So now that we've got most of the projects either completed or being re-obligated by FEMA, we have a much better idea what the actual expenditures are coming in at. And that's why we're going to be coming back with that particular document soon. Carrie, is there anything else you would like to provide? Do we have a target date of when we're going to hopefully get that in the system?
As soon as possible.
So in the near future, on the assembly memo, we'll be able to do that. So that's kind of the update we've been given to the assembly. So we would look forward to your support when that comes forward.
Is that it?
Next. For FEMA, yes.
On the agenda, we have item B, which is an update on ARPA grant distribution funding update.
So on that, I think I might have mentioned it in another meeting or two. We were able to meet our July quarterly report for ARPA as well as our annual report. The annual report is kind of important. We have had assembly questions on that in the past. It is posted on the assembly website and the municipal website in a couple of different places. It's a multi-100-page report. However, should you like to go look at it, you can see the status of different subrecipient projects that money went out to, where they are from spending that, if it's been completed, and those kind of things. So the annual report is fairly important, and we've had questions. So that has been completed. It is out there. By all means, you can certainly go look at that. And we did meet the quarterly report as well. I think as we've also discussed, the $890,000 that came back, you're aware of that. We're in the process of looking to where that goes in the future, and I'm sure we'll be coming back to you in the not too distant future to be able to look at that as well as any other opportunities that might exist going forward. But I think we're actually, knock on wood, I think we're actually in a pretty good place on ARPA administration and monitoring. We kind of know what's going on, where things are, and now we're just fine tuning the expenditure side of that as we go forward. So I'm pretty happy actually where we are in that grant.
So that's in the context of the accounting and expenditures, or what about I wonder if anyone's briefed on the kind of the compliance side of it?
Well, we actually did have a meeting with our contractor today, and Graham, what's his last name? Downey. That was used to be handled by Trista in the prior administration. I've been concerned about getting that side up to speed. We met for over a half hour, talked about the compliance. He's going to do some additional discussions and outreach to those entities. And then we're basically making sure that Graham knows where all the files are and backup. And compliance has been a big deal, and we've really tasked the contractor to really focus on that. And I believe we're in a much better position than we have been in years past with regards to that. And we're also, fortunately, as this goes on, the number of outstanding subrecipients is getting smaller. I think we even looked at one today, which I don't know if it was accurate as of today or June 30th, but there were 27 that were subrecipients that had received 50,000 and greater that are still open. All the other ones have completed their work and are basically closed out. So that funnel, as we've talked about, is definitely getting smaller and will continue to go. But we are heavily focused on ensuring and reaching out to those subrecipients, because I don't really want another surprise like UAA where the money just shows up. How are they going with spending their money? What are their future plans? Are there any challenges that they're having? I mean, they have all the way through December of 26 with then final reporting in 27. So we can't be on them too hard because they still have some period of time. But if they're experiencing some things or know that certain things are out there, we're going to try to do a little bit. We're going to ask our contractor to do a little bit more communication in that front, so that as they move forward, those questions are at least being asked, and we don't kind of get a surprise like had with this last one.
Yeah, for me, the UAA issue isn't the really critical issue. It's the auditors losing their mind and going bald from stress relating to grant subawards that maybe needed some attention in the context of their compliance with the requirements. And so I think the most important piece for you and the sanity of our teams is to make sure that those are being written pretty closely to make sure everyone's in compliance. Now, it would be nice if you could provide us a brief report that just showed how many grantees we had in the funnel, how many are closed, and how many we have left, so that we can kind of keep a track on that and understand, and you can celebrate the success of all those grantees.
Yeah, and to answer your first part of the question, I know that Trista and our contractor were aggressively doing the grant management portion that you're referring to. I think he even mentioned it today that they kind of finished up that in April, May time period, and then put it into our share drives. I haven't been involved as much on that side, but know of its importance, and that's why I wanted to get Graham involved so he can have access and start tracking that. But yeah, the grant compliance portion is a part that we had some gaps in the past, and we did focus on it over the last year. So I'm hopeful that we're in better shape now on that as well.
Last thing we want is any kind of federal inspector general finding something. We would prefer to find it ourselves and fix it if it needs to be done before it's too late. No, I would note that Mr. Salt has joined the call, or he did like 5 minutes ago, or was at the beginning, but missed being able to speak. So you're there now, Mr. Salt. Can you talk?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Perfect. Now we have it on the record. Okay, so do we have a representative from the Budget Advisory Commission here? Okay, we don't. So we'll skip that report again. I think this second month. And then we will hear from the MOA Trust Fund Board. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair Constant. Alex Slivka, currently acting as chair of the MOA Trust Board. We come every month just to tell you that we're operating. The fund is earning a return. It's being invested in an appropriate manner, and we're working very closely with the administration on any support that they need. And other than that, it's in good shape, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? So, yeah, on this topic. So then there's no questions, but I see year-to-date revenues in SAP for the MOA Trust is 8.15 million. What is the year-to-date point on this report?
Well, So that specifically is half of the annual dividend. So the dividend
Oh,
has
so it's just a
been
flat
set
payment.
at 16 million, and the second half of that payment will be made. I think we plan to make that in November. We did
So-
a lot. Sorry,
The dividend is set at a fixed price.
it's 4% of the trailing average that is slowly growing to accommodate the MLMP deposit.
Calculated on the previous 5 years or this year included?
It does not include this year. Its average is calculated through March of this year. So,
Okay.
and then looking back, and the look back goes all the way back to the point at which the 229 million was deposited from MLNP, so as to fully capture the impact of that deposit. If we had kept a 5-year average, there would have been a period in which I think we probably would still be in, where the monies that the municipality used to get from MLNP would have dropped by 8 or 9 million, and that would have not been offset by the increase in dividend due to the averaging.
Mhm. So this is calculated in March. How do we budget for that number?
It doesn't change that much. So, I mean, it's been 16 odd million. Depending on what happens next year, it's probably going to be about the same.
Right. Okay. So then basically, if there were a substantial difference, we would have trued it up at Q1. Okay. Helpful. Thank you. Anything else you want to offer? You mentioned the travel policy.
Oh,
You can put that on the
yes.
record or not.
So just to be on record, so we were impaneled in October and adopted many policies to operate the trust board, one of which was a travel policy that was modeled after the policy used by the police and fire board. We have affirmed in all of our operations that we're going to meet only in Anchorage. Physically, we may have remote meetings where people can be wherever. The idea behind the travel policy is to provide resources for trustees to maintain current knowledge base on investing, trust management, things like that, which parallels the theme that the Police and Fire Board does to keep their members current on industry issues. We don't anticipate using any of the money this year, and I don't anticipate it'll be a large expense, but it's just helpful to keep everybody who's involved with a trust board up to speed on what's going on in the marketplace.
Anyone else? All right, let's move on to the next item. Thank you, Mr. Slivka.
Welcome.
Ms. Browse, OMB Director, acting update on the budget. You have the floor. Your favorite place.
Hello, everyone. Ona Browse, Acting OMB Director. I would like to take the opportunity, since this is the first time I have been before the body, aside from the work session last week, to go over the annual budget calendar so that we can discuss the process that we're moving through right now before it actually comes to the Assembly for discussion and approval. And the calendar that's up on the screen is publicly available on muni.org for anybody who is interested in looking at all of these dates along with us. Right now, we are in the middle of August 15th. And if you'll see right there, we are in the time frame where Treasury provides OMB preliminary revenue projections. The mayor is meeting with all of the departments to discuss their budget proposals. We then move into putting all of the various revenue projections, budget proposals, and healthcare costs associated with running the municipality together, so that we can prepare the preliminary 120 memo. If everybody is familiar with that, that's where we get the first look at revenue projections and capital budgets, as well as business plans from the utilities. The process I would like to offer this committee and the entire assembly is, while we're going through the budget process, as you are coming up with ideas or issues you want to explore, please feel free to let me know what they are. We can set up time to meet and discuss any of your constituent concerns or issues that you have going on in your districts. We definitely want to incorporate that thought process into our budget build. And eventually we get to the budget drop, if you will, where we pass the mayor's budget proposal to the assembly at the end of September. After that, we go into the work session process, the amendment process, and the public hearing process. Finally, to assembly approval, which this year is a week earlier than normal. So instead of doing it the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, we get to do it the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. A little more time. So while we're going through this, please feel free to reach out and let me know what you guys want to work on. I look forward to that. If you have any questions on the calendar, please let me know. Thank you.
Any questions? Nope. Okay. So normally we would have some of these things printed out and readily available, but since you have myself who is just filling in his chair and on his first meeting, there's just a slight lack of coordination to get the materials. Yeah, but I mean, in hand, everything should have been circulated, but it just was, we don't have it here, which is regrettable, but that's okay. We'll kill a few less trees today. Anyhow, so you still have the floor. That's the first part.
Yes, the first part. The second part is normally we would have a monthly budget to actuals report for you on the alcohol tax and the other specific categories requested by the body. We are vetting the final numbers for July right now, and we'll pass them along to you after the committee. But as part of the request, I know that the Assembly has been interested in the spend out of the alcohol tax and any appropriations that may be sitting at zero spend for the 2024 year to see if that's the grants, et cetera, are moving along. And so we have poked into each of the 0% reports on the July budget to actuals to see if they have been encumbered or spent in the timeframe moving forward. And the good news is that almost all of the appropriations are being actively spent and used as they were originally appropriated. There are two that are calculations that need to occur as part of the finance process. And there's another one that we're still waiting on to see what the activity on it is. But it looks like, I think maybe for the first time since the alcohol tax was implemented, that the appropriated budget will be spent in the year it was appropriated.
A miracle. Purchasing is off the stick. Okay, any questions? Anyone on the phone? No? Okay, so that's next part. Is that it for you?
Mr. Chair, that's it for me.
So we had the budget to actuals report on the agenda. If you want to walk through some of that, we don't have to, but
There's nothing to walk through. I'll pass along the documentation for July. And then once we we catch up, I guess is the best way to say it. The transition here has lagged us 1 month. So we'll pass it along to the body. And if there's any questions on it, please feel free to contact me. And we can also discuss the July and August numbers at the September meeting.
yeah, perfect. Mr. Folsey?
One follow-up from the last Budget Advisory Committee meeting that I participated in was that we had talked about whether there is a way of determining what the shape of our budget to actuals are. And it turns out Acting Director Ona Browse was way ahead of me, as I suspect it's going to be the case for a lot of this as we go forward, and had already done a lot of that work. And so the punchline is that we are actually pretty linear. So the fact that the mayor's office non-labor gets spent all at the very beginning, but civic ventures non-labor gets all spent at the end, by and large, it totally washes out. So at least to first order, you can really treat the overall expenditures of the municipality as linearly going from 0 to 100 over the course of the year. And so as we are continuing to present you with these budget to actual information, you kind of keep that in the back of your head. That's a good rule of thumb.
We can show you that graph at the next meeting. It's very exciting.
Go ahead, Daniel.
Yeah, so I think I mentioned this at the last budget meeting, but one thing I continue to be interested in is the inventory tax. And so if there's a way on this document in the personal property tax to break out a subcategory for inventory tax, I think that'd be interesting. Thanks.
So the inventory tax is like 1 day, right? So we get that all in and it's spent in general. So what do you mean? Like there wouldn't be a breakdown monthly of the inventory tax?
Okay, so maybe, I guess really what I'm after is maybe not the budget and the realization, but I want my colleagues to have a firm grasp of what the breakdown of the real property tax is and what percentage of that is inventory tax. I've talked about publicly, I'd like to either increase the exemption for that or potentially eliminate it if there were revenue to replace it in the future. And, I think it's something that it's hard to enforce. And I think it's also not great for small businesses who want to do local manufacturing in Anchorage. So yeah, if there's any way that more information on the inventory tax could be shared with my colleagues, that'd be great. Thanks.
Yeah, and the general briefing we get on that, I think, comes from Jack. And he does it, I think, in April, maybe. He does a briefing just before we move into the levying phase, and maybe he does it at the end of the year as well. And so I'm wondering if there is maybe a report that could go around that's just a kind of some tool that shows the various revenue sources in one place. That's a simple cheat sheet for folks to be able to use and share. That might be helpful. And we update it annually when we know. So maybe there's a way to work that out between now. I don't want to step on you, but I just want to make sure it's like and it might be worth putting a line here, but like the MOA trust, it's a single number at one time, right? So we do have that here. It could be worth putting here.
Through the chair to Mr. Voland, I would also offer that as part of this transition into the new administration, that the Budget and Finance Committee agenda can be reconfigured to include special topics of interest. So we would be able to set aside specific time to discuss the history and background of various revenue measures, all of the revenue measures. That is going to be an ongoing conversation, particularly from the administration, but I know from the Assembly and the public, we're interested in having the conversation about what our revenues look like as a city, what they need to look like going forward, and what our options are. So I think the inventory tax will be part of that conversation.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda will be our monthly revenue report from the Treasury, Glenn.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, we have prepared our usual revenue summary highlights page. This is the 33rd week of the year, so the number we're looking for under the year-to-date posted revenue realization is approximately 60 to 64%. So in front of you on page 1, I'd like to skip on down to the real property tax. To date, we show in SAP, these are figures as of August 12th, we show 570 million off a budget base of 574.3. Revenues should be in by August 30th, and I think our grace period goes to September 8th. So we look very good on that, on real property tax collection this year. Member Voland was speaking about personal property tax. We can get a breakout of those revenues. Treasury's practice is to break them out as we receive them. But I think if we talk to Mr. Gadamus, we probably could get a good estimate of where, the inventory portion will be. So that begins, of course, in October. That's our rolls 2 through 7. Look down on page 2, if you would, the cash pool earnings. This year, we're budgeted in 2024 at about 4 million. And this is a kind of a gray area. Public Finance and Investment Division does evaluation for us on a monthly basis. But again, as we've talked before, they estimate as if we're selling that portfolio out. So you're looking at unrealized losses there. And that 2.02, if you would project that out, it would mean that Public Finance and Investment believes that we'll be somewhere around 2 million off of the budget projection of 4.16. But that could change very quick. That portfolio currently is 925 million. For instance, if the Federal Reserve drops rates, you'll see that Sprint probably pick up 3 to 4 million. For every quarter point, the Fed would drop the rates, and most people are talking about autumn and late in this year that we might see some ease by the Federal Reserve. So we take that with a grain of salt. That will change. That's a very volatile number. We probably won't know where we're going to be until maybe October, November, into the last quarter, particularly after election this year. So page 3, we talk about
Before you
room
move
tax.
on,
Excuse me.
before you move on the cash pool, in the end, did we tap into any TANs?
We did not.
We did not. Okay.
Mhm.
We have plenty of liquidity, as mentioned, with the $950 million, plus we're still getting more through the rest of this month from the payments that are going to be made. So we did not have to issue TANs this year in order to be able to meet our liquidity needs.
Right. And did we bank on the revenue?
That's a very good question, Chair Constant. I told everyone that we were not going to be issuing TANs and thus to not have the interest that in the calculation. However, I do believe that the budget was prepared this year with TANs being issued, and that approximately $300,000 to $400,000 of interest revenue was included in the 24 budget.
Okay, thanks. Just so up to speed when everything's due. Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
I'm on page 3. We're looking at room tax quarterly revenue. The Controllers Group has finalized calendar 2023. That came in for total room tax. This is gross now, 43.29 million. And against, I believe our budget was 39 million. This year, we're at 45.5 million is what we're projecting. The number you see there in 2024 posted revenue, 12.6, is through the second quarter, but not finalized. So there are still some adjustments coming. We posted a realization somewhere around 23%, but again, you're into the second quarter there, not finalized revenue through the second quarter. Okay, rental vehicle tax is currently at 46% of year-to-date realization. That has trailed room tax in the last couple of years. It's very hard to get a feel for where this revenue breaks its association with room tax, but our current theory is we may be looking at the difference in Uber and Lyft and other competitors to the normal rental vehicle tax providers. So again, it's very hard to get those numbers. They aren't available on a state-by-state basis, but we feel that we probably will struggle to get to that $10 million budget number that we have. Okay, if you'll join me on page 4, we'll go through briefly the program taxes. We look good for tobacco taxes, motor fuel excise, auto registration. We get direct reports from the motor vehicle department that is through June, and marijuana all seem to be on track for their budget numbers. Again, our number is about 64% is what we're looking for. And finally, we discussed briefly on page 5, the MOA trust, 8.15 million has been paid and received in July for the municipality. And it looks like the balance will be in October, November. I believe that formula, Mr. Chair, is 20 quarters, the average of 20 quarters, 4%.
20 prior quarters.
Of the market value. And then as soon as we have the valuation in March 31st, that calculation, can be made for the year. Building safety is running ahead because of the additional tax that we imposed, and alcohol retail tax at this time looks like it's right on track as well. Be happy to take any questions from the members.
So on the building safety fund, do you have a projection then where we're going to land? Is it going to be 12% in excess roughly?
Yeah, we began the year before pre-budget. This was at 7 million. We would build from there.
And I think we put in approximately with that 0.45 mill rate, it's somewhere between 1 million and 1,000,001, 1,000,002. So I would hope that, now this also assumes that our building fees and so
Expenses are
forth are,
starting.
I don't know what the construction is going on, but if the construction season matched up to what our projections were, I would expect that number to be 8 or between 8 and 8.2 at the end of the year to help
Yeah,
that fund
and-
balance negative.
And then those funds are intended to, at least in part, flow back in and start to mitigate that net hole. Okay.
That's correct.
And and could we get a sense of, if that were true, a couple million, 1.5 million, what the projection of time would be to fix that problem? So we don't need it unless you have it offhand, but if you can get it, would be great. If you have it, go ahead.
I don't have it available right now, but it is part of OMB's plan to build out that projection so we can design how the BSSA recovery looks over time. And this information helps support that. So yes, that will be part of the conversation going forward for the budget build.
And my only comment is this was an attempt to not have it grow this year. It wasn't to actually gain back any of the loss, but that 0.45 mill rate was just to handle the additional loss that was going to happen this year without that adjustment taking place.
Yeah, so I guess a snapshot of that problem, kind of the trajectory and the solution, and then how many years, that would be a very helpful document.
We can bring you a graph that shows you all that information.
Perfect, thank you. Eldon, that is continuing to be a hit on our ratings, right?
That is, well, it's an absolute hit or anchor on our fund balance. That entire 13 million, between 13 and 14 million dollar is directly related to one from our fund balance, which ultimately affects the 10 and 2 and our bond ratings.
Right. There's a lot laid
But
into that,
but
which I
that's
won't get into
but
right
that's a
now.
big effort. We're not going to be able to get all that back in one time.
And there are questions about, is it just on paper? Like, what does it actually mean? And so that's what we need to get to as a policymaking body. Rather than spending a bunch of money to spend that's already been spent, we should really understand what it is and make sure we fix it.
I'm just thrilled the conversation is happening again. It was buried into fund balance gross before, and now that at least we've broken it out and we're having these conversations, at least it can be looked at and identified, and you will know what the impact is on our overall fund balance because of it.
Okay. So one last question from me. If others have questions, you can jump in. Sorry to dominate, but no one's raising their hand. The tobacco excise tax, that's a direct offset to the tax cap, or how does that work again?
In the tax cap, to my understanding, is the tobacco tax allocated and not part of the tax
it-
cap?
Okay, one of them is in, one of them is, I can never keep track. And so is it still set at 10 cents? Do we know?
Do you know?
12 now. Could we get a kind of a report, just a brief report on the initiation and the change over time of the levy of that excise tax? I think it's probably time to look at that number again.
Sounds like the Treasury Department can go and give a historical percentage on how tobacco tax has changed over time.
Thanks. Yeah, because it might be time for an adjustment up of that. So,
And I think that part of the ongoing revenue conversation will include all of the existing taxes that are collected and the historical look back on how they started, what they have brought in thus far, whether or not they are in market averages or national averages for other like revenue measures, and whether or not adjustments would bring in very specific amounts of money. All of that will be part of the ongoing revenue conversation, and tobacco tax will certainly be part of that.
thanks. That's right. The motor fuels was 10 cents. I'm not arguing we raised that one, but we'll hear that in context. The tobacco one, I think, hasn't been changed for quite a while. Anyone else? Anything? Questions? Nope. Okay. So that's the end of our business agenda. The next step will be audience participation. Anyone from the audience wish to be heard on the phone or in the room? Okay, seeing and hearing none. Anything else from the administration on budget and finance? Nope. Anything else from the members? And we will stand adjourned. Thank you, everybody.